My name is Charlotte. I am 45 years old. For 15 years, Novatech was not just my workplace. It was my world. I gave them everything: my time, my health, my loyalty. I thought I was building a future with them, but instead, they were quietly plotting my end. They believed I would walk away defeated. But what they didn't know was that I carried a secret powerful enough to turn everything around. Novatech was not just a company to me. It was my second home. For 15 years, I walked through its glass doors with the same mix of pride and hunger, carrying the weight of who I wanted to become. I came as a young engineer, quiet and unsure, armed only with determination. I stayed long enough to become someone whose opinion shaped entire projects. I told myself again and again that this was where I belonged. The beginning was humble. I was the woman who stayed late when others went home, the one who fixed code no one else wanted to touch. I remember those long nights, just me, the steady hum of servers, and the city lights outside. Each small victory felt like a secret. I shared only with the machines. Slowly, things changed. I was trusted with more, given projects that once seemed too heavy to hold. I moved from the corner desk to the table where voices turned toward me, waiting for guidance. From there to the whiteboard, where sketches of mine became the backbone of new systems. I fought for ideas that mattered, and I fought for people who deserved to be heard. I told myself often, this is family. We build together. We break together. We rise together. That belief carried me through years of sacrifice. I defended the junior engineers when they faltered, told them, mistakes are proof you tried. Keep going. I carried their doubts when deadlines were cruel, and I reminded them we don't abandon our own. And when we delivered, when our code finally lived and breathed, it felt like more than success. It felt like belonging. But belonging is fragile. Ethan Williams, our director, stood often on the stage at company meetings, polished and certain. His voice rolled out smooth, full of words like unity and trust. We are one team, he liked to say. We succeed together. I wanted to believe him. James Brown was always near him, eyes cold, numbers sharp. If Ethan was the voice of reassurance, James was the blade of calculation. I thought they were guardians of what we built. I was wrong. It happened on an ordinary evening. I was still at my desk, deep in code. The building was quiet, emptied of chatter, left with the low pulse of machines. I told myself, just one more run, then I would go home. Then my phone lit up. A new email. I clicked without thinking. And there it was. An email not meant for me. The subject line was harmless, but the words inside were not. Restructuring, realignment, risk reduction. Then, my name, my role, coldly written, as if I were nothing more than a checkbox to be cleared. I froze. My breath caught, but my eyes kept reading. Ethan Williams, James Brown. Their names stamped beneath a plan already set in motion. My future, reduced to a line on a slide deck. I whispered into the empty room. No, this can't be. The cursor blinked on the screen, waiting, indifferent. I read their words again, slower this time, as if they might change. They did not. I heard Ethan's familiar voice in my mind, soft and reassuring, telling us, we are a family here. And James, clipped and efficient, saying, we need to move fast, make it clean. I could almost hear them speaking from the past, but now the truth bled through. It was betrayal, dressed in business terms. My stomach twisted. The room felt suddenly smaller, the air heavier. I looked around at the empty desks, the whiteboards filled with ideas we had yet to test, the faded photograph of my team pinned near my monitor. All those nights of work, all the sacrifices, all the belief that I was part of something larger, dismissed in a single email. I said aloud, just to hear something human in the silence. I gave you everything, and this is what I am to you. The pain was sharp, but underneath it, something colder stirred. I sat back, staring at my reflection in the dark edge of the screen. My eyes were tired, but they burned with clarity. I realized then I was not broken. Not yet. Not ever. I gathered my things slowly. My badge, my notebook full of sketches, the little photo of my team at a celebration years ago. My hands shook, but my steps did not. At the elevator, I turned once more toward the office. The city lights spilled through the windows. Scattered like embers, I had given this place my loyalty, my trust, my heart, and in return, I had been erased with a keystroke. But betrayal carries a weight it cannot see, the weight of what it creates in the one betrayed. I pressed the button. As the doors opened, I whispered, "You will not decide my ending." The elevator descended. Each floor passed like a heartbeat. I stood tall, even as hurt carved itself deeper into me, because in that moment, in the hollow between faith and fury, I made myself a promise. I would not beg for a place at their table. I would build my own, and I would make sure they knew exactly what it cost them to betray me. There is something almost sacred on this it's about watching an idea take shape, about seeing raw logic turn into a living, breathing system. For me, that sacred thing was the distributed processing algorithm. It began as a fragile concept, a whisper in the back of my mind during long nights at Novatech. I nurtured it like a child, careful, patient, determined to prove that it could survive. At first, no one believed in it. They said it was too complex, too ambitious, too costly. I remember standing in that glass conference room, sketches spread across the table, explaining how it could change everything. I spoke with fire in my voice. But when the meeting ended, all I heard was polite silence. Ethan smiled at me then and said, "It is interesting, Charlotte, but we need to stay practical." And James, sharp as always, added, "We cannot afford to chase theories. Focus on deliverables." Their words landed like stones, but stones can also build foundations. I carried the weight of their doubt and used it to steady myself. So I kept working, day after day, night after night, line after line of code, testing, breaking, fixing. I pushed the system until it sang in harmony, across servers that once stumbled. When it finally held together, when the machines stopped fighting one another and began to move as one, I knew I had given life to something new. Novatech noticed then. Suddenly, what had been dismissed was now our crown jewel. They spoke about it in meetings, as if it had always been theirs. Our flagship technology, they called it. They dressed it in presentations and carried it to investors like a trophy. I told them we needed to protect it. I stood again in that glass room and said, "We should file for a patent. This algorithm is too valuable to leave unguarded." Ethan leaned back in his chair, his smile still polished. "That will only slow us down," he said. James shook his head, firm and cold. "Patents are expensive, Charlotte. Unnecessary. What matters is speed to market." I wanted to argue, Kay, but I knew their decision had already been made. They saw me as an engineer, not as the creator. They saw the algorithm as theirs to claim, not mine to protect. That night, I walked out of the building with a hollow ache in my chest. They had taken my creation and placed their names beside it. It was no longer Charlotte's algorithm. It was Novatech's product. But deep inside, a seed was planted. A seed watered by anger, by betrayal, and by something sharper than both, clarity. I began to work in silence, not during the day, not under their lights or their schedules, but in the quiet hours when the city slept. I opened my laptop at my kitchen table, the glow of the screen painting my face in solitude. I took the algorithm they paraded, and I improved it, refined it, reshaped it, until it became something stronger, something more resilient, something truly mine. Each night I whispered to myself, "They will not steal this from me." There were nights when exhaustion pressed down like stone, but I kept going, because this was no longer just code. This was survival. This was justice, taking form line by line. When the improvements reached a point where I knew no one else could have touched it, I filed the paperwork. My name, not Novatech's. My claim, not theirs. The patent was mine. I remember the moment clearly, sitting in that small office downtown, sliding the papers across the desk to a clerk who barely looked at me. To him, it was routine, just another document in a stack. To me, it was a declaration, a line drawn in ink. I walked out into the cold night air and breathed deeply. For the first time in months, I felt something other than anger. I felt power. I thought of Ethan's smooth dismissal. I thought of James's sharp rejection. I thought of every meeting where my voice was brushed aside. And I smiled. Just a little. Because they had told me patents were unnecessary. They had told me to let it go. And yet here I was, the sole owner of the very heart of their empire. I said softly into the night, "This is mine. You cannot erase me." It was the seed of revenge, yes, but it was more than that. It was proof that they could take my title, my desk, even my badge, but they could not take the fire inside me. They thought they had stripped me of everything. In truth, they had given me the chance to claim what was always mine. And as I held that thought, I realized their betrayal was not the end of my story. It was the beginning of theirs. The summons came on a Tuesday morning. A plain message from Ethan Williams's assistant, short and polite. "Please come to the executive office at 10. No explanation. No detail. Just a time and a place. I knew before I arrived. The email I had read weeks earlier still burned at the edges of my memory. I had tried to push it away, tried to lose myself in the rhythm of work, in the code that had always carried me through. But truth is patient. It waits. And now, it had come to collect. The hallway outside Ethan's office felt longer than usual. My heels struck the floor in steady beats, but my heart refused to match them. The glass walls shimmered with morning light. My reflection followed me, calm on the outside, fractured on the inside. When I stepped in, Ethan was already there, sitting behind his desk, like a man rehearsed for the role. James Brown stood at his side, arms folded, his face a mask of disinterest. Ethan gestured to the chair across from him. "Charlotte, thank you for coming." His voice was warm, too warm, like syrup poured over something bitter. I sat, folding my hands in my lap, waiting. He sighed, the kind of sigh meant to sound heavy with empathy. "You know the company is going through changes. We've had to make some very difficult decisions." I looked at him, straight through him. "Difficult for who?" I asked softly. For a moment, his polished calm flickered. Then he leaned forward, choosing words as if they could soften a blade. "Your position is being restructured. This has nothing to do with your contributions. You've been invaluable, but the organization must evolve. James slid a folder across the desk. The termination letter, clean lines, official seal, my years, condensed into paperwork. I heard myself laugh, low, bitter. So this is what family looks like in practice. Neither of them replied. Ethan only lowered his gaze. As if pretending shame could absolve him, I picked up the pen that lay beside the letter. My hand hovered. For a heartbeat, I thought of refusing, of tearing the papers in half. But then, something steadier rose in me. I remembered the patent filed quietly under my name, the algorithm perfected in secret, waiting like an unseen ally. My ace, my shield, my sword. I signed, slowly, deliberately, not because they had won, but because I knew they hadn't. Ethan smiled then, a thin curve of relief. I hope there are no hard feelings. We truly wish you the best. I stood. My voice was quiet, but firm. You will. For the first time, James looked directly at me. His eyes narrowed, calculating. He saw something in me then, something he couldn't quantify. He said nothing. I walked out of that office carrying a cardboard box filled with fragments of a life, a photo of my team, a notebook, a mug with fading letters. They thought they were stripping me of everything. As I moved through the lobby, faces turned away, some in pity, some in fear. No one spoke. The silence was louder than words. When the doors opened and the cold air touched my skin, I stopped for a moment. The world outside was still moving, still alive, still mine. And then it happened. A smile, small at first, then steady. Not because I was unbroken, but because I had discovered the truth. They had dismissed me. They had written me out of their story, but they had no idea that I carried with me the one thing they could never erase. The ace was mine. The future was mine. I stepped onto the street, the weight of betrayal heavy on my shoulders, but beneath it, something brighter burned, and for the first time in weeks, I felt free. The first time I walked into the headquarters of GlobeNet Technologies, I carried nothing more than a folder. Inside that folder was my future, and perhaps the end of Novatech's dominance. Lucas Miller, the CEO of GlobeNet, greeted me in his office. He stood as I entered, extending his hand, his expression calm, but his eyes sharp with intent. Charlotte, he said, his voice steady. I've heard about you, but I want to hear it from you directly. I sat across from him, the folder resting between us like a sealed truth. This, I said as I opened it, sliding the documents across the table, is the patent Novatech chose to ignore. They believed it wasn't worth protecting, but I knew better. He picked up the papers, his gaze scanning quickly, carefully. He read like a man who knew how to measure value, not in numbers alone, but in vision. Minutes passed in silence, the kind of silence that tests your patience. But I did not look away. When his eyes lifted to meet mine, there was no doubt in them, only clarity. You built this, he said, not as a question, but as recognition. Yes, I answered. Every line, every test, and after they dismissed me, I made it even stronger. He leaned back in his chair, a slow smile spreading across his face. Then you know what this means. GlobeNet will stand behind it, behind you, with exclusive rights. We will not only protect your creation, we will make it the cornerstone of our future. I felt something inside me steady, like a wound that had finally stopped bleeding. Not dismissal, not skepticism, But belief, I had not heard that in years. He closed the folder, his hands firm on the cover, then looked at me with conviction. Charlotte, I want more than just your signature. I want you here, leading the work, Director of Innovation. It is not a title for ceremony. It is authority, trust, and respect, and it belongs to you. For a moment, my breath caught. I thought of the years at Novatech, of Ethan Williams's polished lies, of James Brown's sharp rejections. I thought of every time my voice was silenced in a meeting, every idea taken and paraded without my name. And now, here was Lucas Miller, offering me not just recognition, but a seat at the head of the table. I whispered, almost afraid to believe it. You trust me with this? He nodded without hesitation. I trust talent, and I trust vision. You have both. That is enough. The contract was signed that afternoon. Exclusive licensing rights secured. My name inked permanently into the future of GlobeNet. When I held the pen in my hand, I felt its weight differently than when I signed my dismissal papers at Novatech. That signature had closed a door. This one opened 1,000. When Lucas shook my hand again, it was not the grip of a man claiming ownership. It was the grip of an ally, a partner. Walking out of his office, the title already mine, Director of Innovation, I carried something far heavier than pride. I carried validation. After all the betrayal, after the silence and dismissal, someone of power had looked at me and seen not a liability, not a problem, but a leader. That night, back at my apartment, I spread the contract across the table. The letters seemed to glow against the lamplight. Director of Innovation. My hands trembled, not with fear, but with a quiet, burning determination. I whispered to myself, this is the beginning. I could see it clearly. The announcement of the patent, the shockwaves across the industry, the tremor that would rattle Novatech's fragile pride. This was more than survival, more than vindication. This was the first step in a counterattack they would never forget. Lucas had given me belief, GlobeNet had given me respect, and I would give them victory. I closed the folder, my resolve unshakable. The betrayal at Novatech had planted the seed. The alliance with GlobeNet had given it light. And now, it was time to make it grow. The first day I stepped into GlobeNet as Director of Innovation, the air felt lighter. Every corner of the building seemed alive, humming with energy I had not felt in years. It was not the stale silence of Novatech's halls where hope had withered. It was motion, possibility, a sense of people running towards something instead of away. That morning, GlobeNet released the announcement. The patent bearing my name alone, licensed exclusively to them. My appointment, Director of Innovation, declared without hesitation, without disguise. By noon, the news was everywhere. Articles, industry headlines, messages flooding across screens. I watched from my new office as the word spread, each one carrying the weight of recognition I had waited for all my life. By mid-afternoon, the market began to move. Novatech's stock line turned red, slipping at first, then falling fast. I sat there silent, watching as the empire I had once devoted myself to trembled on the foundation they thought was unshakable. It should have been triumph alone, but what I felt most was relief. Relief that the truth had finally spoken for itself. My phone began to buzz, over and over. Messages, calls, notifications flooding in. At first, I thought they were the usual formalities, congratulations from strangers who only wanted to be close to power. But then I read the names, and I stopped breathing. It was my old team, the colleagues who had stood beside me in late nights, in failed deployments, in small victories no one else had cared to notice. Their words came one after another. "Charlotte, we saw the news. We're proud of you." Finally, someone told the truth. It was always your work. Now the world knows what they refused to see. And then, softer messages, the kind that carried more than congratulations. "I know what they did to you. I saw it happen. I stayed silent. And I regret it. We want to come with you. GlobeNet looks like the place we should have been all along." "Take us with you, Charlotte. Let us build something better." Reading their words, I felt something swell in my chest, something that almost broke me. For years, I had believed I was alone in that betrayal. For years, I thought no one else had noticed, no one else had cared. But they had. They had seen. They had carried the weight of silence, just as I had carried the weight of dismissal. And now they wanted to follow me, not because of power, not because of titles, but because they believed, like I did, that a company could be more, a place where talent was recognized, where work was honored, where voices were not silenced. I closed my eyes and held the phone to my chest for a moment. The stock of Novatech was falling, but something else was rising. Loyalty, trust, hope. I whispered into the quiet of my new office. "We will build it together. This time, it will be different." And then, a name appeared that made me stop breathing. Harper. Harper had been more than a colleague. She was the one who brought me coffee on nights when I would not leave my desk. The one who argued with me about design until dawn, and laughed when the code finally worked. She had been the sister Novatech never gave me. Her message was short. "Can we talk?" I called her immediately. When her voice came through the line, I felt a knot I had carried for months begin to loosen. "Charlotte," she said, her tone soft but trembling. "I should have been there for you. I saw what they did. I watched Ethan dismiss you, watched James cut you down, and I stayed silent. I regret it every day." I closed my eyes, holding the phone tight. "You don't need to apologize," I whispered. "We were all trapped there. We were surviving." "But you deserved better," Harper said firmly. "And now, I see you getting it. I want to be where you are. I want to build with you again. I want to work in a place where our voices matter." Her words broke something open in me. All those nights at Novatech when I had felt invisible, she had seen me. All those times I thought no one cared, she had cared. "I want you here, Harper," I said, my voice steady now. "I want us to build something stronger, a place that will never make us feel small again." She laughed softly, the kind of laugh that carried both sorrow and hope. "Then save me a seat," she said, "because I'm coming." When the call ended, I sat in silence, tears in my eyes, but my chest light for the first time in years. It was not just about revenge anymore. It was about rebuilding what had been broken, not just for me, but for all of us. By evening, more messages came, others from my team, engineers who had watched from the sidelines, voices who had once been quiet, now speaking loud. They told me they were ready to leave Novatech. They told me they were ready to follow me. Not because GlobeNet was powerful, not because titles or salaries tempted them, but because they wanted to work in a place where talent was honored, where work was recognized, where betrayal was not the currency of leadership. I looked out the window at the city glowing under the night sky. Novatech's stock was still falling, but what rose in its place was stronger than numbers. It was trust. It was loyalty. It was the chance to create something just. I whispered into the quiet room, "We will build it together. This time, it will be different." Lucas entered not long after, his expression calm but knowing. "You see what you've started?" he asked. I turned to him, the reflection of the falling stock still on the screen behind me. "It's not just me," I said. "It's us, and it's only the beginning." That night, when I finally put my phone down, Harper's voice still echoed in my ears, her regret, her hope, her decision to join me, and I smiled through the tears. because I knew the tide had turned, and this time we would not be silenced. The day they walked through the doors of GlobeNet, I felt the weight of the past begin to shift. 6 engineers, once my teammates at Novatech, now stood at my side again. Each of them carried the same look in their eyes: relief, determination, and something else: freedom. Harper was the first to arrive, her smile steady, her steps certain. Behind her came Daniel, the quiet one who always saw solutions others missed. Then Priya, sharp and fearless, the one who could unravel a problem faster than anyone I had ever known. Mark, who had been worn down by Novatech's politics, but still carried fire in his heart. Lena, precise, steady, the one who never let a system fall apart on her watch. And Thomas, the youngest, still hungry, still burning with potential. GlobeNet welcomed them not with suspicion, but with respect. Their titles were higher, their voices given weight, their work given room to breathe. I watched them settle in, and I thought of how Novatech had dismissed them as easily as they had dismissed me. And I thought of how wrong they had been. The nights that followed became a rhythm of creation. We gathered in conference rooms lit only by monitors, coffee cups scattered across the tables, whiteboards filling with sketches and numbers. Harper would argue with me the way she always had, her laughter breaking the tension when frustration built too high. Daniel would point out a flaw none of us had noticed. Priya would throw out bold ideas that seemed impossible until we tried them and found they worked. Mark's steady hands kept us grounded, while Lena pushed us to refine every detail. Thomas carried the energy of someone who believed anything was possible, and with us, it was. Together, we took the algorithm that had once been dismissed as theory and turned it into something unstoppable. A product alive and fierce, capable of carrying GlobeNet into a future no one could deny. There were nights when exhaustion weighed on us, when the hours blurred into dawn, but none of us cared, because this time, our work was ours. Our names stood beside it. Our voices were heard. I would look around the room at them, lit by the glow of the screens, and I would whisper to myself, "This is what it was always meant to be." Meanwhile, Novatech faltered. The market punished their arrogance. Their leaders stumbled, clinging to excuses, unable to stop the bleeding. Reports began to surface, shareholders demanding answers, investors demanding heads. The names Ethan Williams and James Brown no longer carried power. They carried blame. And soon, the board had no choice. Ethan was forced to step down. James was shown the door. The empire they had built on dismissal and betrayal crumbled beneath them. I read the news late one night, my team gathered around me, their faces glowing with quiet satisfaction. We did not cheer. We did not need to. The silence said enough. Novatech had lost because it had forgotten what mattered, and GlobeNet was rising because we remembered, because we built not just with code, but with trust, not just with ambition, but with respect. That night, as I walked home under the city lights, I felt the balance of power had shifted forever. We were no longer survivors of betrayal. We were architects of a new beginning, and this time, the story was ours to write. The call came when the sky outside was still pale with morning light. I glanced at the screen and froze. The name glowed back at me. Henry Taylor, the interim chief executive of Novatech. For a moment, I hesitated, my finger hovering over the button, a tide of memories pulling at me. At last, I answered. "Charlotte." His voice came, calm but heavy, like a man carrying a burden too long denied. "Thank you for picking up. I know I am the last person you expect to hear from." I said nothing, waiting. He went on, choosing his words with care. "I will not hide the truth. Novatech is in trouble. The board is restless. The shareholders are pressing hard. Without your patent, we cannot compete. We need you. We need what you created." His words stung and soothed at once. For years I had begged for recognition. Now it came, too late, because they were desperate. Henry's voice softened. Charlotte, I have seen the documents. I have read the reports. And for the first time, your name is in the boardroom, spoken as it should always have been. They called you the creator, the visionary, the one who gave us our most important breakthrough. I closed my eyes, the weight of it pressing against old wounds. Sweet, because the truth was finally acknowledged. Bitter, because it came not from respect, but from collapse. Henry pressed on. I cannot undo what Ethan and James did to you. I cannot erase the arrogance, the blindness, the betrayal, but I can try to repair what is left. I am asking you, Charlotte, to come back. We need you here. We need your leadership. This time, I swear, things will be different. I let the silence stretch between us, long enough that I heard him draw another breath. Finally, I spoke, my voice steady. Different? Henry, for 15 years I gave everything to Novatech. I bled for it. I stayed when others walked away. And in return, I was dismissed like a line item in a budget. Do you understand what that feels like? There was a pause, then his reply, quiet and strained. Yes, I do. And I regret that you were treated that way. I regret that we did not see your worth when we should have. But please, hear me. We need you now. The company needs you. I shook my head, though he could not see. You need me because you have no choice, I said, not because you truly value me, not because you believe in me. You speak now because GlobeNet has shown the world what I am worth. But you had your chance, Henry, and you lost it. I heard his breath catch, as if he had been struck. Still, he tried again. Charlotte, listen to me. We can give you everything you were denied. Authority, respect, recognition, a place at the very top. You can return and reshape Novatech into what it should have been all along. We will follow your lead. I will follow your lead. I almost laughed, but it was not a cruel laugh, only tired. Henry, you do not understand. I already have all of that. At GlobeNet, my team stands beside me. My voice is heard. My future is mine. Why would I return to the place that tried to erase me when I have built something new and stronger? For the first time, I heard defeat in his tone, a quiet sigh, a man who knew the battle was lost. Then at least, he said softly, allow us to reach an agreement. The company cannot survive without licensing. If we are to continue at all, we need your consent. Please. I nodded slowly, though he could not see me. You will have the license, I told him, but nothing more. I will not return. I will not let you call me yours again. When the deal was announced, the world saw it plainly. For the first time in Novatech's history, my name was printed beside the algorithm, not hidden, not stolen, but spoken out loud. 15 years of silence broken by necessity. I stood at the window of my office at GlobeNet, the announcement glowing on the screen, my name in bold. For the first time, recognition had arrived. It was sweet, yes, but also bitter. Sweet because the truth had finally been spoken. Bitter because it had taken ruin for them to see me. I whispered into the quiet room. They finally said it. They finally see. But the smile on my face was not for Novatech. It was for GlobeNet. It was for Harper, for my team, for the future we were building together. Because I understood then that the real victory was not their apology, not their regret, not even their recognition. The real victory was standing in a place where I no longer needed it. And that place was here. 1 year had passed, though sometimes I still woke in the night and felt the weight of those early betrayals pressing against my chest. 1 year since Novatech had cast me aside. 1 year since I walked out with nothing but a box and the quiet fire of determination. And now, 1 year later, the world itself had shifted. The numbers told the story before anyone else could. GlobeNet had risen, steady and relentless, until it eclipsed Novatech. We were no longer the rival in the shadow. We were the leader, and the world had been forced to take notice. The announcement came in the grandest of places, the International Shareholder Summit. Leaders, executives, reporters, and investors filled the hall, their eyes sharp, their voices buzzing with anticipation. As Director of Innovation, my name was on the program, but I knew what it truly meant. This was not only GlobeNet's moment, it was mine. When they called me to the stage, I walked forward slowly, the sound of applause rising and rising until it became a wave that seemed to shake the very walls. For years, I had sat in silence while others presented my work as their own. Now, the world rose to its feet. For me, I looked out across the hall, the lights blinding, the faces a sea of expectation, and I spoke. I told them of the journey, not with bitterness, but with truth, of the nights spent building, of the quiet faith in my own hands when no one else believed, of the betrayal that had nearly broken me, but instead sharpened me, and of GlobeNet, the place that had given me respect, given me trust, given me a future. Every word felt like a stone lifted from my heart. Every sentence built a bridge between who I had been and who I was now. When I finished, there was silence for a breath. Then the applause returned, louder than before, rolling through the room like thunder. Some stood, others clapped until their hands turned red, cameras flashed, names shouted, and I stood in that storm of light, steady and unafraid, letting it wash over me. For the first time, pride filled me without apology. Not arrogance, but pride earned from pain, from struggle, from years of sacrifice. I thought of the girl I had been when I first walked into Novatech, small and invisible. I thought of the woman who had left, broken but unyielding. And I thought of the leader I had become, recognized, respected, unshaken. After the summit, the press swarmed the corridors, voices overlapping. Charlotte, how does it feel to have surpassed Novatech? Charlotte, what message do you have for young innovators? Charlotte, do you see this as revenge? I paused, letting their voices settle. Then I smiled, calm and certain, and answered the only way I could. Revenge is not fire and hatred. It is success no one can deny. The words seemed to echo back, carried by the microphones, etched into headlines, repeated by countless mouths. As I stepped out of the building, the night sky opened above me, the cameras flaring like stars. I did not hurry. I walked forward slowly, each step measured, each step claiming the ground as mine. The flashes lit my face, but I no longer felt the need to hide. The pride that filled me was not the pride of victory over others, but of victory over myself, over doubt, over betrayal. I had endured, I had rebuilt, and I had risen. 15 years of silence had ended. 1 year of rebirth had begun. And as I stood in that blaze of light, my heart steady, my head high, I knew one truth above all others. They had tried to erase me, but I had written myself back into history, and this time no one could take it away.